And yet, I also feel the turning of change, and the accumulated minutiae that falls to the survivors. Corpses to be burned, fortifications to be rebuilt, neophytes to be blooded. Regardless of our losses, we are the angels of death, and we are always prepared for war.
Lining up anti-swarm firing solution.
Today, I'm returning to the universe of Warhammer 40K. While Games Workshop itself is busy trying to become the next Disney by releasing kids' books and threatening to cease and desist their fans, the licensed video games have at least been maintaining that 40K feel for me, especially while we're still stuck waiting for Dark Tide to come out. In the meantime, a new strategy game has released, pitting Space Marines against Tyranids, and the Space Marines are Blood Angels. Gee, why does this all feel so eerily familiar? Welcome to Balfora, a red moon on the brink of a new crisis, and just as any good Space Marine does, it must be met head-on. This is Warhammer 40K BattleSector.
The priest continues to natter in my ear about the Primaris. They have not yet shown any sign of the Black Rage, but we have both witnessed the thirst present within them. They don't yet understand the tightening of their cheeks, the sanguine flush of their skin come battle. No matter how well they think they hide it, these Primaris share our blood, and its defects. The red thirst claws at their hearts. Let us see what becomes of it once they face the beast that killed Pentasio. Know your duty and discharge it above all else. That is the core of an Astartes being, and the reason I am led to these festering pits. I have my duty to Pentasio, and to 8th Company. To have survived Leviathan, only to be laid low by these scrap remnants. I do not deserve the honor of recovering his name. But if it is the Emperor's will, I will see it done.
Let's get the art and sound out of the way first. As far as visual design goes, the graphics are nice. I haven't seen any glitches or outstanding issues with the overall quality, although the designs themselves can sometimes fall a bit short. For instance, sometimes the level really wants to show off its carefully designed pipelines and buildings, causing it to obstruct my camera view. And while I can turn the camera in any direction I want, having to constantly reorient my camera to get a clear view of a unit being blocked by a pipe or a statue can get annoying after a while. How about the characters though? The Tyranids look nice, like some well-designed models, although they, like most other characters, could probably use a bit more dirt on them, something to show they've been fighting for a long time. And with that, I get to the Space Marines. I don't have an issue with using the Blood Angels here, though I do think that the whole Blood Space Marines thing is kind of overused since the Blood Ravens got Dawn of War to themselves and all that. But I'm biased, since I prefer Salamanders. My main issue is with the Primaris. The game's story partly centers around them since the game takes place during the beginning of the Indomitus Crusade where they're first deployed, and they've been controversial since, both in-universe and out. I don't really have an issue with the Primaris as a concept. I find it fairly acceptable that after getting beaten down so hard and the galaxy torn in half, the Imperium tries to make a comeback with brand new super soldiers, and the various chapters themselves are mostly wary of them since they're vat-grown and all that. But as far as design, ever since they've been introduced, something about their portrayal has felt off. They're too lean, too sleek, too smooth, too reflective, shiny, that kind of thing. I get they're new, but even a single battle you'd think would dent, scrape, or dirty their armor a good bit. Leave dust behind or some Xenos blood from brutal combat with Tyranids of all things. But even when they're dead and dismembered, their armor seems practically untouched most of the time. It just breaks the illusion that this is all set in a grimdark universe of endless war when the Space Marines are mostly shining like Iron Man all the time. You know what doesn't break the illusion, however? The sound design. The developers nailed the sound effects in my opinion. The Tyranids sound guttural and monstrous, and the bolt rifles sound like they should, like giant full-auto cannons rather than a standard service rifle. There's impact to it all, it feels powerful. That's how 40K should feel. And the voice acting is great. I don't know who's doing the voices, but they all nail the 40K mix of grim seriousness with silly dramatic flair. The music fits right in as well, using a properly booming and sometimes almost orchestral sounding soundtrack to give you a proper feeling of a gruesome 40K battlefield. And with that, let's talk about exactly what's going on this battlefield.
In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. People are born, they live, they suffer, and die. Rarely of natural causes. Days prior to the fall of Cadia, Dante faced his greatest challenge. High Fleet Leviathan had broken through the Krypton shield, and the Tyranids bore directly for the sacred homeworld of the Blood Angels, Baal.
BattleSector is set on the moon of Balfora, part of the Blood Angels territory in the Imperium of Man. Balfora is dealing with a bit of a bug infestation at the moment, a Tyranid infestation to be precise. Think the Zerg from StarCraft or the aliens from Aliens. If the Tyranids aren't completely wiped from the moon, then they will eventually grow large enough to consume the whole thing and potentially create an invasion force for the actual planet the moon orbits. What doesn't help this is that apparently the Tyranids are reorganizing, the hive mind being controlled again by some still alive synapse creatures. If these Tyranids in particular are left alive, their psychic energies could be a beacon to bring the High Fleet Leviathan back from the warp, ready to invade the entire system all over again. Thankfully for the Blood Angels, the Indominus Crusade had just begun, and they just received a fresh batch of Primaris Marines, more than eager to prove themselves worthy of being called Blood Angels by saving their chapter's homelands from the Tyranid threat. So, how about we get to seeing what their means of ridding the Tyranids are then? As you've hopefully been able to tell by the footage, BattleSector is a turn-based strategy game. The game consists of you going from level to level, choosing which of your Marines to deploy, and then completing the objectives in each level. The game plays mostly like XCOM, if we're looking at comparisons to other PC games. It's got hit chances, extremely vague cover mechanics, optimal weapon ranges, unit abilities, the whole 9 yards. Some of it can feel pretty obtuse though, so I recommend not skipping the tutorial for this one and actually reading what your abilities do. On that note, actually, I find the tooltips very annoying. The closer I get to the end of a mission, the harder it becomes for me to just rest my cursor while I watch the enemy turn, because it'll highlight something and instantly deploy a big tooltip blocking my view from what I actually want to look at. It can make trying to navigate rather difficult sometimes as well. Beyond that, the missions themselves are alright. There's a decent variety of objectives as far as these types of games are concerned, though they almost always end in you having to kill every unit after you've completed all your objectives. Which makes me wonder, why not just make my objective always to kill all units, since that's what it'll end up being. There's no real point in having to fend off the enemy for 4 turns if I need to take them all out anyway, just makes some of my efforts and decisions feel redundant. Unit variety is pretty nice though. You get your standard bolt rifle marines, plasma gun marines, aggressors with minigun arms, assault marines with jetpacks and chainswords, even dreadnoughts and more later on. All of which you upgrade in between missions by spending your upgrade tokens on the various skill trees that each of your hero characters have. The enemies could use a bit of variety though. I get that they're Tyranids, they work in hordes, but it just gets boring after a while and I can only handle so many venom throats before I feel like I'm just done for the time being. Enemies like them, and a bit of the larger ones as well, cause missions to really drag on since, intentionally or not, they act as a sort of area denial, forcing you to stop what you're doing to get rid of them before the entire area is covered in toxic gas, or they completely obliterate a unit in 1 to 2 turns. And these missions can drag on a lot sometimes, even without them. Some of these missions you're looking at took a whole hour to complete, not because of any difficulty, but because I'm forced to deal with area denial enemies and tanks while the game keeps spawning in more units at the edge of the map. Units that I will have to then kill after completing my objective just to make my mission finally end. It'd feel way better if the enemy is forced to retreat after I complete my mission. It would feel more like an actual war that way.
The area has been cleansed of Xenos presence. They will not return. The synaptic link remains.
Take in this moment. Very few get to fight within the place of challenge as a full-blooded Astartes.
Carleon, Matano, report.
Still, complaints aside, the game is pretty fun. It's an enjoyable little strategy game that I've had a decent bit of fun with, though I would certainly recommend you get it on sale. Something about that price point just doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't seem like the sweet spot, you know? It's not a great 40k game, but it certainly ain't a bad one either. This has been TheRatMan, and I will see you all later. And lastly, a special thank you shout out to my Patreon. With a $5 a month pledge is Firefox.com. Thank you for the $5.